ask yourself, why do you want to write this book in particular? Now, a lot of writers have lots of ideas. We all do. We're all creative folks and have lots of ideas every day. And some want to write, a children's book and a novel. And by the way, I have a nonfiction book for my business I want to get out. And I'm like, what is your heart telling you to focus on? What is your passion? What is your main passion? Yes, you can have other books come out down the line, but you need to decide on one.
Welcome to GNP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, aka the Going North Podcast. I'm your host, best-selling author, and certified self-leadership trainer with the John Maxwell team, Dom Brightman. And this is the podcast where authors from around the world help you realize that success is tangible. Now let's get on with the show. Today's episode is sponsored by the GoingNorthPodcast.com shop. And we got some new designs on the website, baby. That's right. Check out the new designs. We got two new designs. One is outread your competition to outlead your competition. And the other one is perfection is completion, but excellence is exceeding expectations. Because when you feel like something's perfect, it's truly not. But when you seek excellence, you are after exceeding the expectations of the folks you serve and your past self. So head over to GoingNorthPodcast.com.shop and pick up some more magical gear in multiple forms in more ways than one. Now let's get on with the show. And today on GNP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, it's the Going North Podcast, because we got another super special, awesome human for you today. Might as well add gorgeous to that, because my goodness, we got a returning guest indeed who fits all four of those G's, because my goodness, for those who may remember from a couple years ago, episode 204, the wonderful modern day Bible stories, we got the MC back in the building, and by MC I mean the one and only award-winning, best-selling author who is also a fellow speaker as well as a college professor and a book coach indeed. So let's give it up for the marvelous and charismatic Michele Chynoweth. How you doing today, Michele?
I am doing great, Dom. It's great to be talking to you and your listeners today.
Yeah, that's right indeed. That's right. She's back, baby. That's right indeed. For those who may remember last time, she said she was going to work on a book involving the wise man Solomon. And now it's finally here at the time of this recording. At least the time you're going to be hearing this is going to be freaking amazing. She's got it done, y'all.
Woo!
That's a day, but my goodness, how have you been these past couple of years with the pandemic and the penguins dressed up as unicorns and, of course, landmines hidden everywhere, metaphorically?
It has been a crazy world of late, hasn't it? I am very blessed, and I am very grateful. My life has been doing well. Now, that's not to say there haven't been bumps in the road. Life happens. I have elderly parents that are, starting to have health issues, and I've been, looking out for them somewhat. I have a sister, and we work together on that. And we have a blended family, my husband and I, of 5 children, and they're all grown now and out of the house. Woo-woo! So that's good. We're empty nesters, and that's been wonderful. I've also had the opportunity to work from home. So that's been a blessing. And I was working from home before COVID hit for a year and a half. So I was already doing my teaching online to writers to help them become authors, my book coaching business, been editing some books out there, and had the opportunity, fortunately, to write my next one. So my work has been doing really well. So COVID wasn't really an interruption for me as far as work goes. It was status quo. I did get sick from COVID, so that wasn't so great, but I'm lucky I'm in good health. My heart really goes out to those who really did suffer and actually lose people. And I know that's hard. And I was fortunate that our family came through. I have 2 grandkids now, and they're turning 8 and 5, and they're a delight. So all things considered, my life, my work has just been going up, up, up. And, that's not to say COVID caused a little anxiety here and there. We had some family members get sick, but like I said, it in the scheme of things, life's good.
There you go. It's good with all the O's, I imagine. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. And grandma status. That's what I'm talking about. 2 of them.
Yeah. God is good.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right indeed. All the time indeed. All the time indeed. So my goodness, so with all the setbacks, the anxiety, catching COVID, glad you survived, because a lot of folks who catch it, it's a life-changing experience, I hear, and not usually for the good.
Yeah. I have to say that for me, as far as my work goes, of course, I'm an author, speaker, and book coach. And as far as the book coaching goes, a lot of people out of COVID had time to write. So there are a lot of books that are coming out of this, and a lot of beautiful, sometimes heart-wrenching, and wonderful books are coming out of the pain people experience, out of life experience, even out of COVID. So there has been some good things come out of COVID as far as people reflecting, people spending time with themselves and writing. And I've been blessed to help them on that journey.
So you're responsible for some of the book boomers coming out of this book boomer age of COVID.
That's a great way to put it. The book boom. The book boomers. I love it. That's awesome. We're in the book boomer generation now. I'm going to use that, Dom. I love it.
Good. All right. Good. Get to spread that like a virus. Indeed. That's right. Indeed. Because folks need to know, because it's so true. Like, so many folks finally had the time to publish the books, like you said, and I'm sure you've probably seen a meme at least once on social media where it says, hey, if you don't come out of this pandemic with a book or a business or something, you waste your time. And I guess everybody took that to heart. It was like, all right, I guess I'll do something. And voila, everybody and their mom on the good note has decided to publish their work, which is amazing. So during this pandemic, has there been any skills that you've been polishing up in the past couple years or so to take yourself to the next level?
Some that's a heavy and good question. Yes. So what I do, basically, some people don't know what a book coach does. I teach online now, and yes, that's been a good thing too. So I've been able to, I developed a master class, first of all, out of my college classes live. That went online with COVID. And then I had already developed my own course for that. So I added to that, developing my own skills in personal coaching as well. So what that means is I have an 8-week course called Your Book Done Right Masterclass. You can find it at yourbookdoneright.com, little plug. And it's an 8-week course where I, on Zoom, teach about 15 students. That's an average size of my class. And they all come together like they would in a classroom. So that's good. They benefit from each other's wisdom and knowledge as well. And I will teach them, I give an 1.5-hour presentation once a week where I present how to write, how to edit, how to publish, and how to market your book. So in those 8 weeks, I teach them the craft of writing, how to get started, how to come up with a chapter outline or table of contents, how to develop their theme, and use good writing style. So I get into the basics, good sentence structure and grammar and description and dialogue. And if they're writing fiction or nonfiction, I teach both. And I taught both together, and now they're separate as far as a fiction class and a nonfiction class. They overlap a lot, but they're slightly different animals. And I'll teach the craft, all of those mechanics and basics. And then we'll work on editing to get these books really polished and perfect out there. There are so many books, a lot of, and there's nothing wrong with self-published books, but a lot of writers tend to do this whole book writing, publishing thing on their own without the benefit of any instruction from somebody who's been there. And their book comes out not as great as they want it to, let's just put it that way. And so I help, take their books to the next level from what I know and have developed for myself as an author, best-selling author, and teach those skills to them. And in the course of that, I've added some personal coaching if they can't make the class. I've developed my own skills as a writer. They say, teach what you need to learn, and that's so true. So fortunately, my books have benefited because of it too. I got a little bit of a, I'll just be honest, I got a little bit of a resentment after I taught a couple classes and did some coaching and editing, saying, wow, all these, and it's, I love what I do. All of these books are coming out and I haven't done my next one. And I hadn't written since 2017. My book came out in 2019 and my last book. So I was like, I need to get another book out there. So I went on a sabbatical, let's just say, last fall into the winter, and voila, The Wise Man came out, or is coming out. It'll be out by the time I'm on the air.
Indeed, that's right. Indeed. The book will get its wings. Y'all will be flying into your devices, your hands. That's right. Indeed. That's right. Indeed. So, my goodness, your book done right. That's what a lot of folks need to have for their books, since everybody wants to publish books and it's a huge business. So, my goodness, I'm pretty sure you teach folks to avoid 99 mistakes. So, are there 2 major mistakes that a lot of folks need to avoid when they're publishing their work that you teach them to avoid?
There are more than 2, but I will boil them down into the most important. I always say, ask yourself, why do you want to write this book in particular? Now, a lot of writers have lots of ideas. We all do. We're all creative folks and have lots of ideas every day. And some want to write, a children's book and a novel. And by the way, I have a nonfiction book for my business I want to get out. And I'm like, what is your heart telling you to focus on? What is your passion? What is your main passion? Yes, you can have other books come out down the line, but you need to decide on one. And then if you're writing a novel and it's a story, how can we elevate that to, what's in it for the reader? So a lot of writers say, I want to write this book because, on divorce, because I went through a messy divorce and I have a lot of wisdom to share. That's all well and good. But, a lot of people have been through divorces, and, what makes your book unique? What message do you have to share? What's in it for the reader? So that's like a main key that a lot of writers don't think to ask themselves. What's the message? So it elevates good books into great books, just like a movie. When you go see a movie and it's an action-packed movie or a drama or a romance, whatever it is, whatever the genre, and you watch the movie and you're spellbound, but it also, when you leave the movie theater, like transports you or transforms you or inspires you, it changes your heart. And that's what a great book needs to do. So I encourage writers to ask themselves, what's the theme? What's the message? What's in it for the reader? That's a main key. A second is, a lot of writers don't have a plan. So they sit down and they say, okay, I'm going to write the next great American novel, or I'm going to write the next Chicken Soup for the Soul series, whatever. And they just sit down at their computer or facing a blank screen and they start tapping it out, but then they get stuck, writer's block, right? And they can't get past it. And that's why so many writers sit on a book and never get it done for years and years and years. That's usually when they come to me, actually. I've been working on my book for 8 years and I haven't gotten it done yet. And I tell them, you need a plan. First of all, you need to write out what I'll call a chapter outline for fiction or nonfiction. For fiction, it's the story, and you say, what happens next, what happens next, what happens next. For nonfiction, it's a table of contents, but it has to have flow and a theme and, make sense. And you need to hash that out a little bit and have it acts as a roadmap for your writing so that you don't sit down and have writer's block, but you know what you're going to write the next day and you go forward. Because here's another thing that happens to a lot of people. Life happens. They have a death in the family, God forbid, or they get really sick, or, and have a health issue, or something happens with one of their kids, whatever the case may be. And it takes them away from their writing for like a month or two or more. And then they sit down and they're like, how do I go forward? If you have that plan, that outline, you'll be able to pick right up where you left off. There are a whole lot of other common mistakes like point of view, switching point of view midstream, and, the reader gets confused or lost. Not tell is a big teaching item for writing coaches because, and you might say, well, how do I do that? You need to learn good description, appeal to the five senses, be specific in your words, give us a picture as, and I tell a lot of nonfiction writers, actually, business books and so forth, that the reader still needs to be able to picture your words, envision what you're trying to tell them. So people relate to story, and this is true of public speaking too, as you know. People relate to story more than they do concepts. So you need to show us what you're saying. That's another big one. And I could go on, switching tense, switching, not being consistent in a lot of things, point of view, tense, chapter length, and that type of thing. But they're all the mechanics and anybody can learn. Anybody that has a desire to write can write a good book with the right guidance. Your book done right.
That's right indeed. That's right indeed. Your book will be done right working with Professor Michele, y'all. That's right. It won't be done left. As in left behind. Unfinished forever.
Or we could say it won't go south. It'll only go north.
Ah, yes indeed. Yes indeed. I love the way you think. That's what I'm talking about. Indeed. That's what I'm talking about indeed. It's solid point you brought up there because it's so true. It's like, hey, I got all these book ideas. But then again, at the same time, it's like, what's the book you really want to write? Like, what? Like, let's get rid of the surface. Let's get rid of the icing. Like, let's get to the actual meat. Like, what's the real book you want to write? And it's so darn true. That's kind of how, especially nowadays in this land of distraction where folks kind of get caught up.
Love that. Land of distraction.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yes,
and
indeed.
that's another thing. This is really important for writers. When you sit down to write, get rid of the distractions. It's like you wouldn't be on your phone, on Facebook in a doctor's appointment, right? You wouldn't do that. When you schedule your writing time, like schedule 2 hours to write, like you would do it like you would a doctor's appointment where nothing's allowed in. No social media, no phone, no emails. Put your phone out in a different room. Kids, get a sitter if you have to. Do what you need to do to have that no distractions. That was a great point, though.
Oh, yeah. That's right, indeed. Yes, indeed. Great point leads to great penmanship, right?
Luckily, we have computers now.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Don't have to go to libraries like it's 1980 and look up stuff. You can always go to Google to confirm, especially if it's the correct information.
That's a big help on research, but I always tell writers, if you can, talk to people in person, and over the phone even, or online, but talk to people to hear how they talk, how they sound, about their culture if you need to, to do research. For example, in my own books, The Jealous Son is based in the native Navajo land culture and out in Arizona. And the Navajo people are very private. I had a difficult time. I had met some, but not really gotten to know any. I was out in Arizona with my husband. He was on work, and we went to see the Grand Canyon, and we came across a tribal village where they were selling their arts and crafts type of thing. So I experienced it a little bit. And then I Googled some of their culture, my characters. It's based on Cain and Abel, where, well, we know what happens, but how, murder mystery from Eve's perspective. And Eve was, Adam and Eve were, of course, kicked out of heaven. In my book, the characters are growing up on the native Navajo nation, and they get banished from their father, from their land, and have two sons, and they're in a rock band, and one gets jealous of the other, his stardom, his girl, all the rest, and bad things happen. I won't tell you the rest. But back to my point of research. So I called this college, Dene College out in Arizona and Utah, and I got the PR director, and he said, I can authenticate that. So you want to be, if you can, you want things to be authentic, because your readers are smart and they know. So you can do a lot on Google these days. We're very lucky as writers to be able to do that. But when you can, talk to somebody. So The Wise Man, based on Solomon marries an Egyptian princess and starts to turn to her idols, and the idols of the women he ends up with, and turns away from God eventually. And in my book, I said, well, how is that going to happen? So it's an American Supreme Court justice, actually, the main character, the son of David, who in my book, The Peacemaker, was United States president. So obviously it's a sequel, The Wise Man to The Peacemaker, and to some degree, and those characters, some of them continue. David meets Bathsheba. Yikes, right? He has an affair with her and kills off her husband. And that's totally modern day in my book, has Solomon as a result. And Solomon comes to his own fame in becoming a United States Supreme Court justice. And actually, remember how Solomon, I'll just go with this. Is that all right, Dom? Can I tell about my book?
Go ahead.
He, on the Supreme Court, has to hear a Roe v. Wade type of case, where in the book in Solomon, two women fight over a baby, and Solomon has to make a decision, whose baby is it? In my book, there's a baby born live out of a botched abortion, which happens very rarely, but has happened. And the woman who has the baby, later, knowing the baby's born, wants it back. The Planned Parenthood-like facility, it's not Planned Parenthood, it's actually a doctor who is a little shady, performs this late-term abortion, and it goes wrong. And anyway, the nurse working with him, the assistant, the aide, saves the baby and adopts it, and they're fighting over the baby. So anyway, I won't give away too much, it's a suspense, but it's very timely. Anyway, Solomon goes on to China. He visits an island in Australia, and a visiting Chinese young lady is on the island as well. They meet, he falls in love, but most, not all, but most, China doesn't really have a religion. They believe in, and not all, there are Christians over there, there are Muslims, there are various faiths, but for the main part, and mainly the government, they don't worship any God. It's the Communist China Party, the government. That's basically their religion. And So my Solomon character, his name's Finn Mitchell, starts to let go of his Christian faith, and bad things start to happen. And I, again, won't give away the ending, but I had to research China and their cultures and their beliefs and get to know all of that. And so I talked to, now we have sensitivity readers out there, and I fortunately talked to an Asian sensitivity reader and authenticated all of that. So now I told you about my book. But my point being, yes, we need to, it's hard work. It's hard work writing a book, but if it's done well, it will take off. And you know that. You're the author of some great books, and I'll put a plug in for you, Don.
That's right, indeed. Plugging in for all the juice. Got to plug it in, indeed. And my goodness, congrats on this book. And you're so right, it's timely. It's like as you were describing the book, like two things popped in my head. First is delays aren't denials, like you're taking that sabbatical so you could write the book and not really writing anything since 2017. It's like, sweet. This is why I had to take so long to get this book out here. It's like, oh yeah, 2022, crazy stuff still happening. And the other thing was just the power of really just actually reminding folks to just get out and talk to people, because a lot of folks tend to kind of wear, I guess the word introvert is kind of like a badge of honor to avoid people. But it's like, hey, depending on your story, especially stuff like this, it's like, hey, you got to actually get out there and really talk to people to make sure that you actually are doing your book right. Especially this era of folks who may be a little bit on the closer to the pillow side of the game as opposed to the brick.
Right. And you brought up a great just life point, because you're very wise and Solomon-like in a good way, that people in general, yes, if given to our own devices, tend to isolate, and that's never a good thing. God, I don't believe, wants us to isolate, but be in community and serve others and talk to one another, and not just text or email. It's easy to do that. It's easy to, in this post-pandemic world, just we're currently still in it, but hopefully it'll be post soon. But still, the bad thing is a lot of people, I think, tended to isolate and not, be in touch as much with other people. And I think a lot of people suffered because of that. And yeah, it's always good, and writers tend to, like I said, not just writers though, people tend to, stay on their electronics. It's easier. I don't have to bother with other people. I don't have to really talk to them. But we know if that goes on too long, that can have a detrimental effect on everybody.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Heck, now I remember the original second point that even popped up as you were talking about that is the fact that your decision-making process for which Solomon story to go with too, because there's a plenty of Solomon stories to go with. It's like, oh wow. So I'm guessing with the Peacemaker coming out, is that kind of this decision making process to make it kind of like a semi sequel to that? Like, how was it? Was there some like prayer involved? Did you like read the Kings and the wonderful Samuel books and just figured out, okay, maybe this is where I want to go? Like, how was that decision making process to finally choose, all right, so this is where I'm going to go? These are the parts of Solomon's life I'm going to pick for the inspiration of this book.
That Don Brightman knows his Bible, doesn't he? Hopefully Michele Chynoweth does too.
You do.
I think I touched on this in my first interview with you, and this is wonderful to be back. But I'll touch on it again. So I didn't set off to say, I'm going to reimagine Bible stories in modern day and come out with all these great novels. No, God, I had to, actually I had a moment of desperation. So I actually had written another whole, what I thought was going to be a great American novel that never saw the light of day. It won a fiction prize and with the Maryland Writers Association. I'm in Maryland, but sadly the prize was lost when another tragedy happened, 9/11. And so we all suffer, COVID, pandemic, 9/11. It's like, world events have an effect on all of us. And anyway, lost the prize of literary agency representation. And back then we didn't have self-publishing. That was in 2001. So I was crushed. And I was also feeling crushed about my life at the time. I was going through a terrible divorce. I'm gonna cry. Felt like I was losing my kids who were becoming teenagers, and I owned an advertising agency. My other past life, no, one of my former careers wasn't, and I still help authors with marketing, but I was an ad agency owner and a marketing director, and before that, a news reporter, which also helps with it all. But anyway, my ad agency of 20 years was tanking. It was the recession at the time. So I was in a point, here's my book not getting published, and my health was suffering due to the disease of alcoholism. And, it's genetic. It happens to some of the best of us. And I was in a really dark place. And I heard a still small voice say, Michele, you should write a book, a novel based on the book of Job in the Bible. Now, at the time, Dom, I wasn't really going to church on Sundays. I wasn't, I was feeling not happy with God, to say the least. And I was like, Bible story, God, hello, that's not going to make me rich and famous as an author. Sometimes I argue with God, but that's okay. He's got broad shoulders, right? And it didn't let go. So that became the faithful one based on the book of Job. Now, to your point, or to your question, I started reading the Bible. So that was a good thing. And I researched, I do research through the Anchor Bible series. Anybody out there that wants to write something based on the Bible, it's an in-depth study on each Bible story is developed, book of Job. So I researched that. My character is Jewish, and I visited a temple and talked to a rabbi and that. So anyway, that came out, and like Job, God brought me healing and through some of that despair in writing the book. So that was great. And I started to, and my life started to improve. So I remarried a wonderful man, and we have a blended family of 5 kids, like I said. So and they're all grown and healthy and out there and doing good things. So, that's a blessing. Ended up really following my calling and I believe, purpose in my career of helping other writers. So my business, went forward, and I ended up in recovery, and I've been in recovery 18 years. So God brought me through that. Then a friend of mine said, you should write your next book on Abigail. And I said, Abigail who? And he said, look her up. And that became, Abigail becomes David's second wife, but before she does, she's married to a mean, narcissistic, abusive alcoholic. And I was going through a divorce. I could relate to Abigail. So I wrote the story based on, it follows that Bible story of Samuel. Very good. And David's story alone is like, a whirlwind of action-packed suspense, right? It's, running away from Saul, the whole fight with Goliath. And then eventually he clashes with Nabal, Abigail's husband, in the desert. And I do it in the context of a presidential election. So, totally modern day. And she gets swept up in between her husband, who's one of the candidates, and David, character, who's the other. So, I loved writing that book. And I started to speak to church groups, women's groups, and so forth. And I realized my books were helping other people. A young lady when I spoke about the peacemaker, was going through she was married to a similar, she said, I feel like I'm married to the same guy you used to be married to. Can we talk? And took my hand, and gives me chills because I felt like if my books, it's not about being rich and famous. It's about making a difference, even if it's in one person's life, to help them to change and grow and find God. Another one in one of my speaking events said, I decided after reading your book to go back to church. I was like, wow, that's awesome. So I did a Bible study. It was on Jonah, and that became my book, The Runway Prophet, which is a thriller set in Las Vegas, where the Jonah character is called out to work with the FBI in Vegas because there's a terrorist group they're investigating that's AKA Jonah gets sent out to Nineveh, so city of sin, right? And he wants no parts of it, jumps on a cruise ship like Jonah did, but ends up back in Vegas working with the FBI and saving the sinners. And as he first calls them and realizes these are people that need help. And I could relate because it's a message of, how when we try to rescue other people, God rescues us in the process. So I want to say, God, like I'll be totally not thinking about it. And then a thought will pop in my head, you should write the next book on this. And that's all God. I mean, just, I didn't come up with this stuff. And the good thing is there are a lot of Bible stories that are exciting that can be reimagined. So I have two sons, they're in a rock band or they were, and have that sibling rivalry. And again, I have one sister and we have a sibling rivalry. Everybody who has brothers and sisters usually does. And that spurred my next book, The Jealous Son. And then The Wise Man. Well, I was in Australia and my stepdaughter was an au pair over there, and we were visiting her, and she worked for a extremely wealthy family. And I mean, you have no idea, lifestyles of the rich and famous billionaires. And I thought I should write on Solomon because, I led a very blessed and sometimes entitled life myself. I went to the best schools, went to University of Notre Dame. I was lucky. A lot of folks aren't. But here's the thing, like I suffered at times from fighting God and from turning from God. And I could relate to that whole, you can't always get everything you want. And some like the, Rolling Stones song, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. Had to quote that. I love the Stones. But anyway, what profit a man or woman if they gain the whole world and forfeit their soul? There's the message.
There we go. Solid message indeed. Solid message indeed. Well, two more questions to let you make a run for it in the interest of time, since you got a maiden after this. And I'm pretty sure you haven't heard this one yet, since books are food for the mind. So, if the wise man was a food, what would it be and why?
Oh my gosh, that was a question I didn't expect. If the wise man was a food, the first thought that comes to mind is sushi, because I love sushi. It's filled with lots of different components, right? You got your, spicy tuna and avocado and a little bit of cucumber, or maybe a little cream cheese or those things they put on the outside, fish roe, or a little spicy mayo. It's got a little spice, got a little sweet, got a little meat and little veggies thrown in. But it's a combination of suspense, romance, mystery, intrigue. I call it edgy Christian fiction or edgy inspirational fiction. It's based on I stick to the Old Testament. So, we got the Torah and the Quran out there. So all faiths can dig my books. And they actually eat sushi in the book. The Solomon and his wife go on a trip. And I hope you like sushi, but if you don't, then it's a Chinese banquet where it's full of all these wonderful exotic foods. I mean, Solomon also meets the Queen of Sheba and kind of hooks up with her. So, it's got a little spice in it, and just warning. Or promise, as the case may be, if you like that kind of thing.
Solid indeed. You're actually the second one to say that their book is sushi. I love it. The sushi's freaking amazing too. Plus all the omega-3s from the fish. So good stuff indeed. Good stuff indeed. Good with all the O's out of a Cheerios box. It's real good stuff.
Yep, you'll love it.
Oh yeah, that's right indeed. If you hug the book, take a selfie of you hugging the book. Send it to Michelle for social media purposes.
That I would love. I love to hear from my fans and readers. Please, I know you'll tell people how to reach me, but you can visit my website, michelechinoweth.com. It's a crazy last name, right? Chynoweth, Michelle with one L. And there you'll find all about my coaching, speaking, classes, your Book Done Right Masterclass, and all my books are on there, and they're available paperback, ebook, audiobook, wherever books are sold, basically. And or you can actually get an autographed copy from me on my website. And please, if you read them, if you can write me a review on Amazon or Goodreads, and also email me. My email is in there, and let me know what you think. I'm open to all kinds of feedback. I love hearing from people.
Oh yeah, that's right indeed. That's right indeed. So we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive for round 2. And it's definitely one of my favorite questions to ask because it gets deep into you. So, you're called to give the last speech of your life. It's the last speech you're ever going to give in this lifetime. And you get 90 minutes. And your audience is all 8 billion people on Earth. What would your message be, and what would the main points of that message entail?
I would say love one another. And just like Jesus said, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have done unto you, and love God, love one another, like the 2 basic commands. And I think if everybody did that, love conquers all. And if we all love one another, be kind, be generous, have a servant heart, help one another, forgive, all of those things that come with love, true love, choose to love, that we'd be a better world.
Woohoo!
I just got chill. Thank you for to go practice what I preach. All right then. I hope 8 billion people heard that out there. Not original, but
hey, it's all good. It's all good. Sometimes it doesn't have to be original. Sometimes we just need reminders.
Absolutely.
Oh man. So there you have it, folks. Go out there, love your neighbor, love on somebody, love on your family, your friends, y'all. That's right. Share them some love, share kind words. Somebody they gonna need it. That's right. They may need it more than you know, indeed. And be sure to check out Michelle's wonderful brand new book, shiny book. Be sure to buy some autographed copies, indeed. That's right. Name of the game, make your hands tired, y'all. I'm telling you. That's right. Make your hands tired, indeed, from signing all these magical books, indeed. So, any parting words before we close up shop, Michelle?
No, just out there. If you can find me on my website, stay in touch, tweet me, whatever. I'm on all the social media, Instagram, whatever. So stay in touch and reach out. You got to reach out to each other. And thank you for the love, Don Brightman.
Thanks a bunch for tuning in and setting aside some of your time to listen to this wonderful podcast, Going North. If you really enjoyed what you heard, do me a solid and share this with your network and someone that you care about that would get something out of it too. And be sure to subscribe to hear more, and heck, even check out the backlog if you would like, because there are hundreds of episodes to choose from, and they just keep getting better and not butter.